start first by handing over to you, Jack, at GTC Scotland, to look at how this sort of collaborative approach links with the professional standards.
I'm good. Hopefully I'll be able to structure it underneath the idea of coaching and mentoring being part of professional learning conversations, and tease out how that ties directly in with the standards and what the standards say about it and the expectations for us as professionals. But if I go to the concept of trusted teaching, which is at the top of the slide, you may have seen this slide before, but this very much sets out the strategic plan for the General Teaching Council, underpinning that idea that, as we would all agree, I think teaching is highly complex relational and intellectual work. You know, we are grounded in our professional stance by being a graduate profession. You know, we have gone into teacher education, and we continue in our commitment as professionals to extend our knowledge and skills through our ongoing engagement with professional learning. So it's a highly specialist knowledge and skill base for as a profession, where we're actually working in relationships of authority of trust. So the relational side of our roles is key in successful outcomes for children, young people, for delivering learning for sustainability. And it's all of this is underpinned by the learning conversations. And I want to tease out what the professional standards say about this in a bit more detail. So if I look at the suite, I'm just looking across the provisional, full and career-long professional learning standard in the next slide, if possible, to what it says. And here on the left-hand side, I've just picked out what the standard for full registration. This is the standard we all keep. But in the fourth bullet point down, it talks about our commitment to lifelong learning, which is part and parcel of, I think, what brings us in as educators and teachers. But it actually talks about enhanced learning and teaching by taking account of feedback from others, including children, young people, colleagues, etc., and actively engaging in professional learning. Now, professional learning conversations, that concept of coaching and mentoring, are a way of having very meaningful feedback and very meaningful self-evaluation and supported spaces. Also in bold, I think importantly, is also that role that we all have. It talks about us working collaboratively to contribute to the professional learning and development of colleagues, including student teachers, including teachers on their probationary period, including colleagues we work on. We've got a role, it says in the standards, of leadership of and for learning and the learning environments we lead. Also, I've gotten bold at the bottom about engaging with professional updates process. And what I want to tease out is really the concept of professional review and development, or the meetings that support us as learners to reflect on our impact and our next steps. But what I'd also like to look at before, so these are the benchmark standards in provisional full, and then an aspirational standard in the career-long professional learning in purple. But I'd like to look next at the formal leadership standards that sit with the standard for Hedgeforth standard for mid-leadership, and just tease out what do they say about this. So they place that leadership responsibility on ensuring and enabling sustained approaches and processes which support engagement with critically reflective practice as an integral part of our career-long professional learning, and the professional learning culture of the school or the learning community of the setting we find ourselves in. Now, it goes on further in this case to actually name coaching and mentoring, and it talks about establishing, enabling, sustaining the coaching and mentoring principles and approaches which support professional learning, including PRD. And I'm coming on to the PRD process, the Professional Review and Development Dialogue. In terms of middle leadership, it's very, very similar, but it also talks about my role as in middle leadership, developing my coaching and mentoring skills and promoting it so we can foster a culture of peer support, commitment and collegiality. These are all parts of things that are articulated in our professional standards through the professional learning conversations we have. But what do I actually mean? What is coaching and mentoring, and what does the GTCS website say about it? So the link is hyperlinked above, but basically we identify it in terms of a continuous two-way process through which the person in the role of the coach or the mentor uses skills, questions, discussions, guided activity, the GROW model, whatever it is, to help the person who is in the mentee or coachee role, who's been coached or mentored. And it's usually about solving, finding a solution, addressing an issue, or completing tasks to a higher level than would be otherwise the case. It's about creating spaces where I can maybe develop new knowledge for myself, led in this case in mentorship by the skills and knowledge of my mentor. And it's aimed at really helping me helping make a direct contribution to my knowledge, skills and ability base as an educator to improve my performance, because I've had that supported conversation. So though I talk about professional learning conversations, both coaching and mentoring use guided activities and structures. So we're not just having a really good, interesting professional learning conversation. The role of the coach or the mentor holds the space differently to allow me as the mentee to tease out new possibilities and maybe think things I haven't thought of before. And I'll come to that. But there are differences between them, and I think that's important for our conversation tonight. So this again comes from our website, and it's on the next slide. Kirsten, I don't know if you can move it on, but it talks about that they're similar or different. So the best way maybe to describe it in the continuum of somebody who's maybe in their first year of teaching in a college or a school or wherever they may be. In that very first role, the role of mentoring and the specialist knowledge of the person who's my mentor is essential. And that's where it talks about, the mentor should have relevant or similar experience, be able to act as a model and be able to offer advice. Because if I'm my very first stages or new part of my job or wherever, I need somebody who can help me navigate the complexity of that professional world. But they are both learning conversations, and they help us share, reflect on our practice, agree and maybe plan for what are the next steps going forward. And they've got the focus on improving the learning and teaching through the knowledge and skill base that I possess. And it is of mutual benefit. So if I'm in the role of a coach or a mentor, I learn just as much as the person who's actually been coached or mentored. It's a learning conversation for both parties. It should be supportive, but also it should be challenging. You should be finding yourself examining areas of new ideas and practice you hadn't thought of before, but within that support of the mentor. And very, very importantly, and this is the trusted teaching at the start, there should be confidentiality, so that actually as my ability to speak to my mentor honestly and openly allows me to expose areas that I might not otherwise, or actually have the courage to go out and try new challenges or new possibilities. But if we can look to the next slide, this is stolen shamelessly from the Santa Cruz teaching. You can't see it and I can't edit it. I'd like to change the text at the centre, but it's from the new teaching centre at Santa Cruz. It's dated, but it's from their mentor roles for their newly qualified teachers. And I really like it in the terms of, what are the teacher mentor roles? Well, we've got advocate, facilitator, coach, collaborator, learner, problem solver, resource, teacher, assessor, but trusted listener. And I suppose from my stance, I would say that one of the most important roles coaching and mentoring but certainly in that mentorship role, is that active listening, that listening to the other person for their learning needs, what it is they want to do. So you're not engaging in a conversation in the same way you might with a colleague, where you're teasing out something really exciting about your practice, but you're actually holding the space and listening for the learning needs of the other person. Now, that's also comes into the role when we talk about the General Teaching Council and the role of professional review and development in this. And in the next slide, we talk from the guidance, and I think actually the guidance is 2019. Forgive me, that's a typo on my part. So we have guidance which talks about coaching and mentoring being the cornerstone of a range of approaches to learning and teaching, and the way in education settings that are led and managed. You saw that in the way it's articulated in both the standard for headship and the standard for middle leadership. And that requirement that actually my professional review and development is an entitlement for me as a teacher to have that supported space for me to come forward and really look at the impact of my learning. And it's based on the idea of coaching. So when I go to my PRD with my line manager, Elaine, I don't expect her to tell me anything. I expect her to help challenge my thinking to go to places I may not have thought before. And again, we come back to this idea of relationship and the position of relational trust. The relationship is the heart of all of our professional learning conversations, because through those and being able to be open and honest and feel that what we have to say is our contribution is valued, we develop that relationship of trust, where I can be open to feedback that may be harder for me to understand, or I can allow for deep reflection and inquiry, so that I'm stretched to create new knowledge or question areas of my practice, or maybe look at my professional values in a way I haven't been challenged sufficiently, or because it's very hard to challenge your own professional values unless you have someone there as a coach or a mentor to do so. The next slide actually comes in, and I'm coming into the concluding area, is a slide that I find most useful when I'm thinking about these areas for me, but as a coach or a coachee or as a mentor or as a mentee. And it's about the connectivity between the inquiry, which is often grounded in the role of the coaching and mentoring conversations, that professional learning through dialogue, and that collaborative endeavour between the two people involved. And key to it is that dialogue at each stage of the process, and the idea of challenging each other's thinking. So I'm hoping that as a mentee, I'm also stretching my mentors, like, oh, crikey, I hadn't thought about that. That's an unusual challenge. But it's the way we make sense of our professional knowledge practice through that dialogue and develop collective understandings, or build new understandings on something I thought I was familiar with, but hadn't gone out to stretch my knowledge. All of that is there then to sort of say, so what am I going to do next, Jack? What are you going to do because of that? And what differences do I think I'll make? I think it is also too about sharing the successes, failures and limitations, because sometimes we learn just as much from things that go pear-shaped as we do for things that we absolutely celebrate and we know we nailed it. So it's that importance of the professional dialogue and that collaborative endeavour. But before I pass on to my colleagues, I wanted to just highlight some further reading or areas. So the My GTCS website is available to everybody who's registered, and in the My GTCS area in the top left hand corner, there's a tab that has research. So it's the hyperlinked here, both to the standards and information. Also in blue there is a very interesting part of the Education Scotland website, which has links to coaching and education, a definition of coaching and education, and there's some great learning resources made available there too. But in terms of going into the education site, there are a number of ebooks that are available. This one's one of my favourites, which is Mentoring Teachers in Scotland, a practical guide. By names you'll be very familiar with. Each chapter is written by different colleagues from across Scotland. There's Tim Pulley's work around professional learning conversations, and of course Christine Ford. So these are just some of the things that if you're wanting to go and find out a little bit more after this evening's session, you'd like to find out more. But there's a whole heap of resources in there that you might find useful. I also would like to say my apologies if I disappear partway through the session. I'm sitting in a building that people are waiting to lock up, so I will not be able to stay. So my apologies for not being with you to the end of this session. Kirsten, I'll pass back to you.
Thank you so much, Jack, for that really comprehensive and interesting introduction. I think setting the scene to for this, and particularly that idea of the two-way approach and the professional learning through dialogue. I think it's really at the heart of this. I don't know if anyone wants to ask any questions at this stage. I hadn't picked up anything from the chat, but if anyone does have a question that they would like to ask, knowing that Jack is having to head off quite soon, please put your hand up. I'll pause there just to allow, in case you want to.
It looks slightly as if I'm sitting in some thermonuclear reactor, or I'm the Ready Brek green child at the moment. Also, feel free to follow up through email, or I'll come back if there's any questions I can help with.